Let's just settle together as a community, taking a few moments to let our bodies come into the space. And giving our breath time to come into the space. Just starting to feel that in-breath and to feel that out-breath. Knowing that we have time to wait for that in-breath and to wait for that out-breath. And as we wait, we'll begin to notice the sensations of the breath. Feeling that breath at the nose or the mouth. Allowing the eyes to relax. Allow any holding of the jaw to release. Allowing the neck and the throat to rest. And just waiting for the shoulders, arms, and hands to rest. Until we come to feel that center of the body breathing. Wait for that in-breath. And wait for that out-breath. You may start to feel the torso and pelvis rest. Legs and feet. Beginning to feel the presence of the whole body here and now. That whole body breathing. And the settling begins in our being as we sense the body resting and breathing. There's a willingness to rest back. And the mind can sense this. There's an opening to rest back. When the mind feels that opening to rest back, we can ask it to sense for that feeling of spaciousness. That feeling of the open sky, to rest there. If you give your being time, It knows the feeling of the open sky. If you wait, it will come. And we can sense with the ears that feeling of space, sensing sound as far as we can in the distance. Sensing silence as far as we can hear. It is the feeling of the horizon. Your being knows this feeling. If you wait, the vastness of the horizon will come. And you become one with the feeling of the sky. You rest together. That feeling where everything is right in the world when you rest together. And when that open sky rests with you, the presence of the earth will come. You know the feeling sitting upon the earth. To rest with the open sky and the earth. Your being deeply knows this. Just wait, and the feeling of the earth will come. Perhaps it's the feeling of sand or the feeling of grass. And your being will once again understand that groundedness of the earth. You rest together in that feeling. As you sit upon the earth and are present with the open sky, a feeling of happiness may come and peace. To have the sky and the earth in my life, it makes me so happy. Thank you for being in my life. In this moment, you know spaciousness. In this moment, your being knows silence. And it knows the love it feels when it is one with the earth and the sky. Rest here and breathe. If you wait, they will always come back to you. And starting to come back to the breath. Beginning to awaken the body. When you feel ready, letting the eyes open. And if you'd like to, you can make your way up to sitting. Welcome, Andrea. So tonight, I want to focus on the importance of the feeling of pausing. To me, I haven't fully come to understand that teaching, but I'm starting to. So it's just been in the last day that I have started to feel a little bit more of that silence and that spaciousness, that feeling of that pause. Because it left me a little bit the last few days. What happened was a little bit of a stress response. And when that stress response happens, I notice that the feeling of spaciousness and silence begins to leave. So it's a little more chaotic, a little more unsettling. But I'm very thankful to have gone through that stress response so that I could understand it. What happens for me is when I see people that are emotionally under stress, that I care deeply about, I get that stress. Because in that moment, when it says that that person needs my help right now, it's urgent, then my mind says, I do not have time to pause. I do not have time for spaciousness. I do not have time for silence. I need to go do that right now. And when I skip over that pause, even if it's just a day of being in that stress response, days after, I suffer greatly. I cannot be there for others because my gut is in knots. I have to sleep and rest and heal. And so that intention of trying to help someone right away, I start to understand that when I do that and I have that stress response, I cannot actually be there for that person who's struggling. So continuing that cycle, which is a cycle for me over my lifetime, of saying I do not have time for space and silence, I suffer. And then I cannot give my true presence, my spaciousness, my love to another who is suffering, or to myself if it is something in my life. So I understand a little bit more now the importance of that pause, to be able to see that emotional distress in someone you love deeply, and your mind understands you have time to pause. You have time to remember spaciousness in this moment that you can feel is trying to drag you to tension. You have time for silence, because if you do, you will be able to give your true presence to another. And that will be the most healing thing that you can give. So I need to go over and over that in a teaching to let my mind know I have time for that pause. They will be okay. I have one moment. I always have one moment for silence and spaciousness. And so I will build my practice to come to know that spaciousness and silence, which is the feeling of the sky, the feeling of the open water. I need to come to know that more and more in my being so that pause is quickly accessed. I know that feeling. I have time. And I really trust that if I start to come to know that teaching more and more, then my true presence will be given when in need. And just maybe that stress response that takes me out will start to quiet. and I'll be able to be there for people and myself. So tonight I want to focus on just going over the teachings in our mind to let it know I have time to pause. I have time for silence. And once we go through those teachings, we'll go back to our foundational practice of sensing the sky, sensing the open water and the earth. Because that's where the feeling of silence and spaciousness are. Okay? So let's go back into our practice. Just settling in, taking some time to wait for that in-breath and to wait for that out-breath. I have time to wait for that in-breath. I always have time. And I have time to wait for that out-breath. And just wait, and that breath will come. I have time to feel the presence of the body here and now. I have time. And I have time to sense for the feeling of the sky, feeling of spaciousness. I always have time for you. And together, just feeling that in-breath and feeling that out-breath. Giving your body time to settle. And as we settle with the breath, the presence of the body, and the feeling of the sky, this is the feeling of a pause. The feeling of waiting. The understanding in your heart that you have time. Let your being know you always have time for this. It's just a moment. No matter how urgent the situation is, you have one moment to pause. Always. You have a moment to remember that feeling of spaciousness, feeling of the sky. You have that moment to remember that silence. When you're in that spaciousness, it comes. And then you can feel your true presence, that spaciousness, that silence, and that love. My true presence can be offered to another or myself. This is why I always have time. I hope to one day come to understand this teaching so that I may live in that feeling of spaciousness, silence, and love. So that I may give my true presence to all beings and myself. I understand it has the ability to heal, to bring calm and peace, steadiness and love. Just breathing with this teaching. I have time. Remember the sky. I have time. Remember the stillness of the open water. I have time. Remember the grounding and steadiness of the earth. I have time. as you continue to breathe in your practice. As Thich Nhat Hanh teaches, the greatest gift you can give another and yourself is your true presence. When another being feels that silence of your being, they know there is no judgment here. It's just quiet. And they feel that spaciousness of your being. They feel too that feeling of the sky. It allows us to relax. And when you are in your love and kindness, that brings great comfort to all in your presence. So your true presence is your greatest gift. You always have time for your true presence. And starting to come back to the breath. Beginning to awaken the body. When you're ready, letting the eyes open. Just making your way to sitting. If you'd like to unmute yourself, you can. Or taking palms together. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
Bye.
night.
Night, night.